Have you ever had photos that you just cannot wait to scrapbook? Well, that's exactly how I felt about the photos I am documenting today. I'm using the Nature Walk DSP from Stampin' Up. Now, this collection is absolutely gorgeous with its outdoor inspired prints and colors. All those greens and blue tones are totally my jam. I also picked up the sticker sheet and I did grab the scrapbooking workshop kit as well. Now, these are the photos I am documenting today. They are from a Mexico trip, and we went on a zipline excursion through Vallarta Adventures. So this photo was taken before our final journey up the rest of the mountain. This photo here is of my son, Evan. He was on what they call a zip coaster, which is basically a zip line that feels like a roller coaster. I'll share more details about these photos later in the video, but this one here is of me way above the trees, definitely my happy place. I ended up choosing 8 photos for this layout. This one is another shot of Evan riding a mule. And let me tell you, it was really hard not to choose more because they were all so good. So when I look at this photo here, the scene is very jungle-like and the water is such a deep green. This pattern paper really echoes those colors and complements the photos beautifully. That gradient from light to dark and even the swirl design gives off total water vibes. So I knew right away this one was a must use. To balance that out, I want to pair it with a neutral. So this crumb cake grid pattern paper is my first choice. There is a lot of warm tones in the photos and it really ties everything together. And then for one more pattern, I'm leaning towards this Secret Sea paper. It complements the 2 patterns and pulls out the blue tones from my husband's shirt. Secret Sea is one of those colors that works with just about every color. Kind of like black, but softer. I don't really have a firm plan going into this layout. I print my photos at home and I usually choose my favorites to print a little larger. I know I want this photo of me on the right side of the layout so that I'm facing inward. This one measures 4 by 5 1/4. And then my focal photo here on the left, it measures 4 by 5 3/4. So just a little smaller than 4 by 6. This 3 by 4 landscape photo was taken riding in the back of the Unimog. There's also yellow in both these photos, the focal photo and this one. So I'm placing this one underneath my photo on the right to help separate that color across the layout. I printed 3 more landscape 3 by 4 photos and I'm envisioning them in a vertical column running down the far right side of the page. For the last 2 photos, I'm thinking something like this. The 4 by 5 1/4 photo of James here with the final 3 by 4 portrait photo beside it. This photo was taken while rappelling down a rocky terrain beside or, under a waterfall. Now, I've rappelled down like a rock wall before, but never anything like this. Definitely scary, but so much fun. And now that everything is roughly in place, I can see I've left myself with some room for a title and a few embellishment areas to finish it off. Now for my pattern paper, I am picturing a strip of the green paper running down either side of the layout. I really want to see that full color variation and let it frame the page. So what if I use a smaller portion on the left? Then I'll grab a second sheet to create a larger section on the right, kind of for a visual here. I really like the way that this paper looks behind these photos. Now for the crumb cake pattern, what if I place that right through the middle so that it peeks out on, both sides? I don't necessarily want it perfectly equal though. I know I want a bit of that white willow cardstock showing along the top, maybe something like this. And then for the Secrecy pattern paper, I'm thinking of running it below the photos, almost like a shelf. Maybe, I don't know. I'll just think about that. So we've got a bold, colorful pattern, a subtle neutral print, and then a complementary color and pattern to round it all out. So I had a total Jama made me do it moment here. I have been thinking about replacing my paper trimmer for a while. Mine wasn't cutting straight anymore. And then after watching Jama's video, she totally sold me. I added the Stampin Up trimmer in my last order and I have zero regrets. This thing cuts beautifully. Hands down, the best trimmer I have ever owned. So here's the plan. I'm going to trim the green pattern paper to 4.5 inches wide, and then whatever's left, so that 7.5-inch piece, I'll use on the right side of the layout. I'm flipping the paper upside down before cutting it. It probably doesn't matter much, but I really want that darker design in the far corner. And this way it stays in the lower outer corner once everything's flipped back over. The reverse side of this paper is perfect for, of course, outdoor photos, but I'm thinking sports, like maybe football, especially with the color of the turf and the outside, tones. So next I'll trim the crumb cake paper to the same 4.5 inches wide. The larger piece will go on the left side, pulling it down slightly so that I get about a 1-inch border of the white cardstock showing at the top. And then I'll add the remaining piece on the right. Then I'll trim both sections down to about 9 inches, we'll say. And then while I was at it, I cut 2 strips from the Secrecy paper, one at 1 by 12 and one at 2 by 12. I'll place the wider strip on the left, layering over both pattern papers, and then on the right, I'll tuck the narrower strip underneath the green pattern paper for a slightly different look. Looking at the 3 photos on the right, I really like how they're sitting slightly askew like this. I cut mats for each of them from Night of Navy cardstock. Not the two-tone version. I'm still working through my solid core stash. And then to repeat that color on the left, I'm adding a Night of Navy matte behind the focal photo as well. That blue really helps these photos pop and complements all the green tones in the background. Before moving any further, I'm going to ink the edges using Secrecy ink and a sponge. This excursion was unlike anything I've ever done. Honestly, half of the adventure was just getting there. Now, I'm only documenting the kind of mountain portion of the trip. We traveled quite the distance before reaching the fishing village where the Unimog picked us up. Then we rode the utility vehicle up to the main hub where we geared up and learned the ins and outs of the course. They had a photographer on site. She posed us for some photos and then followed us along through the course, capturing both videos and photos throughout the day. So I'm leaving the center of the crumb cake paper uninked so that the whole spread still reads as one cohesive 12 by 24 layout. I'll finish the rest of the inking off camera. So I have an idea to create a mountain scene to span across the bottom of the layout. This is the Light and Wonder bundle, and I'm only using 1 die. It cuts out a mountain silhouette. One side gives you jagged, rocky peaks, and then if you flip the die over, you get softer, rounded, hills, still mountains. The mountains around Puerto Vallarta are more, rugged and uneven, but I thought it would be fun to cut the softer peaks from brown cardstock. So this is craft cardstock from my stash, but pecan pie would be a great substitute. This strip measures 2.5 by 12, and I'm running it through my machine twice, lining the die up end to end to create one continuous mountain range. I like to secure it with a bit of washi tape so that nothing shifts. And then for the second layer, I'm repeating the process in Mossy Meadow cardstock, but this time cutting the jaggedy peaks. So I'm flipping the die over. So if I layer them together, they give me this cool effect. The brown and the green combo works perfectly. If you look at the background of this photo, the mountains are a mix of rocky browns and green vegetation. So I have this open area along the bottom of the layout for that layered mountain scene to sit. For the next part, bringing in a brand new set coming up next month called Rolling Waves. I picked up the bundle, but I'm actually only using the dies. Not exactly the way that they are intended either. So they're designed to cut waves, but when I flip them upside down, I see climbing vines. And if you layer this die over top, I think it's going to work perfectly for the water underneath. I'm taking my inspiration straight from the photos here. So in theory, I think this should work out. So this is pecan pie cardstock, and I want the darker side facing up. Whoops. I'm going to cut several of these shapes from the paper to extend across the mountains. With all the vine-like pieces, I'm confident I'll be able to hide any seams once everything is layered on the layout. So here's a quick tip. When you're using dies that cut out lots of tiny bits like this, I find it really helpful to keep the cardstock in the die and then use a piercing tool to pop everything out. Now, I'd usually do this over a garbage can, but you get the idea. It makes cleanup way easier. So back to the photos for a minute. Our next trek up the mountain was on mules. That was an experience. Mine was a very pushy fellow, or lady, honestly, I'm not sure. And it kept trying to pass the other mules ahead of me. So pinning my legs a few times along the way. And just when I thought that, there was enough excitement, my mule also got nipped by another one. So this wasn't really, a relaxing experience, but definitely memorable. For the smaller die, I used the lighter side of garden green two-tone cardstock. Now that all the pieces are cut out, this is the moment of truth. Let's see how it all comes together. So we've got the two mountain layers first, then, what could be the jungle vines or craggy rocks, depending on how you look at it. And finally, the green layer on top. That green is almost identical to the color of the water in the photos. I love that. I couldn't have planned that better. So these dies layer over each other perfectly. I'll repeat this on the left side and then add another piece to the middle. I think this is going to work. Before I attach everything, I want to add a bit of dimension with some ink blending. I'll move the layout aside and bring in blending brushes. I've got pecan pie garden green and mossy meadow ink pads, plus a scrap piece of paper. Starting with the mountain layers, I'll blend ink along the peaks. I'll always, starting on the scrap piece of paper first to avoid blotchy splotches. I'm just darkening the tops slightly. So back to the photos. This adventure included ziplining, repelling, and water slides. But my favorite part was the zip coaster. So I think you can see that on camera, but I've just darkened up those edges there. I'll do the same with Mossy Meadow, on the other mountains. And then for the vine pieces, they are much more delicate. So I'm tapping off extra ink first and then blending very lightly. I'll start at the base and then work my way up, just darkening certain areas instead of covering, the whole piece. So for the zip coaster, they attach basket style seats to your harness, and it's exactly how it sounds. A roller coaster on a zip line. So there we've got some variation in color. So as came to the end, all I could hear was one of the guides yelling, "Close your mouth!" over and over again. And a second later, I was in the water. I'll finish the rest off camera, following the same process. But stay tuned to the end of this video because I have a video of me on the zip coaster and I'll play that for you. For placement, I want one side of the mountain scene to tuck under the paper layers on the right and then overlap them on the left. I also like how it overlaps the photo of James here. I'll repeat that with the next mountain layer, keeping them flush on the left. And since these layers are shifting around a bit, I am going to take the time to attach the whole scene together and then I'll adhere it to the layout, starting with the two wave pieces. I'm also going to nudge this photo up slightly. It feels a little crowded down here and there's nothing important in that area on the photo that I need to worry about covering. For the title, I'm leaning towards Stay Wild and Free from the Exploring Nature stamp set. I have this open area in the upper left beside the focal photo, but the title won't really stand out if I stamped it directly onto the layout. So I cut a large white circle about 4 inches wide, and the title will fit perfectly on that. I'm just not quite sure what color yet. While I think about that, I'll move on to what I do know. I tore the pattern paper edges on both pieces over here on the right, and then just the Secret C piece on the left. You won't see a ton of it in the end, but I like the texture and interest it adds. I pulled out a few stickers from the sticker sheet. This one says Outdoor Fun and this mountain scene. And I'm thinking that would be a great way for, covering the mountain seams down at the bottom here. And this will start a little embellishment cluster. So looking at the photos, there's a pop of yellow in the Unimog and then some of the vegetation. So I cut a tag from crushed curry cardstock to layer behind the stickers. That unexpected pop of color is really fun, and now I know exactly what color I want to use on the title. I'm using my new Stampin' Up positioning tool here. I'll move the layout out of the way and bring in crushed curry and Secret C ink along with a damp stamp chamois. I keep mine in, an old stamp case. I'm centering the circle on the board and holding it in place with the magnets. I'll start with the lighter color, crushed curry. The positioning tool also has optional paper inserts with grid lines that sit on top of the base. They protect the surface from ink and then help you line your paper up consistently using, the ruler and the grid. One side is imperial and then the other side is metric. And of course, I didn't order them. So I'm going to use a bit of washi tape to keep my circle from shifting. Definitely a step I could have skipped if I had the grid paper, but this works just fine. The grid paper inserts are on my next order. Next, I'll place the stamp face up in the center of the circle, making sure the Stampin' Up logo at the bottom of the positioner door is facing up. Then I'll pick up the stamp with the door. Now this has a spring-loaded system, so you really don't need much pressure here. Before inking, I'll double check the circle is still secure. I'll flip the door open and using a finger sponge dauber, I'm going to carefully pounce ink on just the words stay and the ampersand, making sure they're fully covered. One of the nice things about using a large stamp like this is how easy it is to ink only the portions you want in the one color. Now, if you don't want to use sponge daubers, you can always, mask off the areas that you don't want colored. But for a stamp this size, this technique works really well. Once everything is inked, I'll flip the door over and press it down. That looks good. But for good measure and to darken up the color just a little bit more, I'm going to ink it up and stamp it one more time. For the Secret C color, here's a quick tip. When you're working with multiple colored inks on one stamp, it's really important to clean the stamp between colors. I like to give it a quick wipe with the damp stamp chamois and then lightly dry it before moving on. It keeps your colors crisp and prevents any muddy mixing. You can even stamp on a scrap piece of paper first. Yet another good reason to have the grid paper handy. I'm leaving the stamp exactly where it is. That's the beauty of using a stamping positioning tool. And this time I'm using the ink pad directly onto the stamp. I just want to make sure all the words are covered well while trying to avoid, the word stay and that ampersand. I don't want to end up with green words. Now I'll take my stamp chamois and gently wipe away any ink from the areas I don't want in blue, kind of like dabbing, a carpet stain. Once the ink is removed, I'll lightly tap the surface kind of with my finger to make sure that it's dry, and then I'll flip the door back down, double checking that the blue ink is exactly where I want it. And if you're wondering how you can get your hands on this tool yourself, Stampin' Up is actually running a promotion right now. So if you live in Canada and join my team as a demonstrator and press, you get this item included for free. I'm part of an amazing supportive team and you'd be included in all of our events, plus you'd receive a discount on your paper crafting supplies. I'll leave a link in the description box below if you'd like more information. And there you go. That layered look is exactly what I was hoping for. I would truly love to welcome you to the team. Off camera, I use the Swirled Designs stamp, so this splatter stamp here, to add some texture to the title using Blueberry Bushel ink. Since it's such a bright color, I used second, third, and even fourth generation ink in random spots on the circle. Then I inked around the edges with Secret C to frame it and grounded the title a little. Next, I turned to Cricut Design Space and cut out a person ziplining to add to my mountain scene. I cut this piece from Secret C cardstock, cut a mule, using the print then cut feature, pulling the hex code for Pecan pie so that it would tie back perfectly with the mountain colors. I mean, look at him. He's so cute. So there's a little ledge at the top of this photo to give him the perfect spot to stand. and then, right in front of the title, fitting nicely in that space. Then I searched Unimog in Cricut Design Space. Surprisingly, there was a lot of options. I cut this image twice, once in Secrecy and then once in Crushed Curry. I fussy cut the truck out from the yellow layer, and then I adhered it on top of the blue one. And then to finish it off, I cut a white circle using the Spotlight on Nature dies to back the image, creating a little badge embellishment. And this gives me a pop of yellow on the right side, which really balances the layout. The Rolling Waves dies also includes a few standalone shapes, like this leaf here. Where did I put that? Oh, over here. I cut a few of those and also pulled in some tropical leaves I already had left over from a previous layout. And just for fun, I'm also using this pine sprig die from the Branching Out dies. I honestly don't know how I haven't used this set yet. I cut these little pine sprigs out of old olive cardstock. And then I'm going to add in, this leaf as well. I've cut everything from a mix of greens. So I've got garden green, old olive, mossy meadow, shaded spruce, and even shy shamrock. And I'm placing them loosely for now to kind of build out my clusters. I'll fine tune everything before adhering. I tend to move pieces around quite a bit until it feels right to my eye. Before I get too carried away with the embellishing process, I want to add my journaling. So this is another new product coming out in March. These dies cut file folders. So there's like a large one and a small one. And of course, there's some fruit icons that, I can't wait to use on future layouts. But for this page, I am using the smaller file folder die and cut it from Crushed Curry cardstock. I'm tucking it behind this photo to create a hidden journaling spot. It'll be easy to pull out from the top of the page protector and read. And I'm going to pop off camera now to quickly type and print my journaling, and then we'll finish everything up. So I printed my story on white cardstock, sizing it slightly smaller than the folder itself. And then I stamped the words, the story, and a small down arrow on the tab using the Love This Moment stamp set. This way, it's clear the journaling is hidden behind the photo. I stamped another arrow at the bottom to indicate that it flips over. Now this gives me the perfect opportunity to add one more photo and a QR code that links to the videos from that day. I made a little stopper using some scraps of cardstock. I just, doubled up 2 pieces. This keeps the photo from sliding down any further. And then I'll use just tape runner along the bottom and very strong adhesive on each side to really lock it into place. I tucked in a few tropical leaves and a sticker that reads "No Boundaries," and that all sits nicely behind this photo. I wasn't loving the tree scene sticker here. I already have, that custom mountain and jungle scene on the page, so it felt a little too much. Instead, I swapped it out for a compass, and it still covers the seam, but takes up a little less visual space. To reduce the bulk even more, I'll turn the tag sideways, so just a hint of the yellow peeks out from behind the photo and stickers. Enough for that pop of color that I wanted. From the Gears and Textures stamp set, I stamped and fussy cut a few of the chevron arrow pieces in Blueberry Bushel and Pecan Pie on white cardstock. Now, arrows are such a great way to add movement to a page, and we're really leaning into that here. I'm adding a blue one near the title for a bright pop of color, and then another one down here. That feels good. For the third one, I'll use the tan to repeat that color over in the right-hand cluster. I'll play around with placement a bit before committing. Sometimes it just takes a few tries before, you find what feels right. To tie in with the splatters that I added to the title circle, I want to bring in a bit more of that same texture into the background, but very subtly. I'm using crumb cake ink with the same splatter stamp and adding a few light impressions coming out from behind the focal photo. So one here and then one there. Whoops, I'll stamp that again a little higher up. We didn't actually get muddy that day, but if you look at the photo of James descending the waterfall, the water at the bottom is quite brown. I didn't realize it at the time, but you sure can tell in that picture. So this ties in nicely while still keeping the background subtle. So I'm carefully peeling back the photos as I go. This is why I don't fully adhere them until, the very end. I'll add a bit of splatters behind this photo, some down in the lower left, and a little behind the photo with the journaling. Our final challenge that day was a huge water slide. But of course, we didn't know that's what we were heading into. Once we removed our gear, we were handed a hockey helmet with a full cage and elbow pads. I'll admit, the thought of what did I get myself into crossed my mind at that moment, especially when one of the guides folded an elbow pad and stuck it inside my helmet so it would fit my head properly. But the water slide was an absolute blast. I can totally understand why the extra precaution was needed though. In place of the arrow, I turned to my Cricut again with the print then cut feature and created a hockey helmet with a cage to play off that part of the day. I used the hex code for Secret C to match the layout, and I did pop that up on foam dimensionals. I also used the faux bronze pentagons, placing them in groups of 3 around the clusters, along with a few stickers from the sheet. One says no limits and the other unstoppable, carrying more of that same color around the layout. I did pop up the pecan pie arrow and the mule as well, just to give the layout a little bit more depth. And that finishes off the page. I'm really happy with how the mountain jungle scene came together. And this is such a good reminder to not be afraid to flip your dies, mix them up, look at them, in a different way. From the journey up the mountain to the zip coaster, water slides, and all the laughs along the way, this layout captures the day I'll never forget. If you enjoyed this adventure layout, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps support what I do here at Nicole's Scrapbook Stories. Then we've got the extra picture on the back with the QR code. That worked out so well. And I'm just loving how this turned out. Before I let you go, I promised to show you that zip coaster clip. So here it is.
Close your mouth! Close your mouth!
Okay, still worth it. If you like to see still shots of this layout, head over to my Instagram and Pinterest. And here's another ziplining layout where I used this collection as well, and that's linked right here for you. Thank you so much for crafting along with me. Until next time, keep telling your stories one page at a time.